Hello everyone, it's Ross here, and I'm still working on a few different scripts, so I thought in the meantime I would dig up an old story of mine. I originally wrote it around 2010, and I had been sort of toying with the idea since around 2007 of the basics of this story. And I've made a few changes to it over the years, but it's more or less as it was. It's not even really a full story, it's the beginnings of a story that I never finished, but it's the introduction of one of my old characters. And since I haven't been able to find someone to voice her, I thought reading her story might help introduce her properly. So, without further ado, this is my cringy old OC fiction from around 14 years ago. Every story has a beginning. Some start on a dark and stormy night, but this one starts on a crisp autumn day. So we begin with a young boy taking a stroll in the woods, mainly just to collect his thoughts, but also to collect some chestnuts. They would all be scattered on the ground around this time of year, and you can really never grow out of roasting chestnuts on a bonfire. November 5th was just around the corner, and it would be the perfect time. The boy's name is Heath, and at the time of this tale, he was in his teens, but hadn't yet begun to act like a typical teenager, aside from a few small tendencies at least. One of those tendencies was the occasional need to get out of the house, away from the noise of his siblings and the eyes of his parents. This part of the forest was a place he'd come to often. He knew it well. His uncle lived nearby and used to bring Heath and his sisters here while they were all younger. Very few others passed through, which suited Heath. He was not the most socially adept of people. The forest was perfect for simply wandering and reflecting on his own thoughts. If he ever managed to catch someone's eye, he'd probably have taken them here for the seclusion and peace it offered. Though that wasn't a particularly likely occurrence. He admitted to himself that his life was pretty boring, but he didn't really mind it being that way. It was a little lonely, but at least it was quiet. As it happened, though, something else was able to make his life far more interesting that day. Heath gathered the fallen chestnuts from beneath the trees, carefully picking them out of their prickly shells and carrying them in a makeshift pouch that was the held-up hem of his coat, thinking as he went about the various trivial worries of his life, like schoolwork, trouble with friends, or rather, lack of them, and not really paying attention to what he was doing. Until he heard a rustling nearby, and swore he saw something slip between the trees out of the corner of his eye. He stood stock still. He didn't expect anything dangerous. He knew there had been no wolves or bears in England for at least 500 years, but thinking it might be a deer, and not wanting to scare it off, he looked around slowly in the direction from which the rustling seemed to have come. He couldn't see anything at first, looking around the nearby bushes and bracken as he tried to spot some sign of movement or the shape of an animal that he thought was hiding. He turned his head and he again heard something move in the thicket. This time he was much surer of where the noise was coming from. Slowly he made his way over, being careful not to make too much noise himself as he went, avoiding twigs and fallen leaves. He could feel it watching him, whatever it was, and edged closer. As he got nearer, he could make out the shape among some thick brush. He heard a rustling again and froze once more, thinking that the animal, which he assumed was a deer still, might be about to flee, hoping to at least see it as it dashed away. But it was not a deer, and it was not dashing away. Two yellow eyes appeared from the shadows of the undergrowth. They were almost glowing in the surrounding green. For a moment the eyes simply stared into Heath's, and Heath stared back. Then a green blur tackled him, sending him crashing to the ground and scattering his chestnuts. The next thing he felt was a hot, humid breath on his face, and he found himself looking straight into those yellow eyes, deep, piercing and snake-like. Heath tried to move, to get free, but the creature's grip was too strong and its weight pinned him to the ground. There was no escape. He gazed, terrified, back at the thing that had tackled him. Its face was like that of a lizard, covered in smooth green scales, with a mouthful of thin, sharp, clearly carnivorous teeth. But there was also something horsey about it, and an intelligent look in those eyes. And unlike a reptile, there were long ears either side of its head, which protruded from a mass of long, silky, black hair? No, not hair. It looked and felt more downy, like feathers. Either way, it was obviously well groomed, as Heath could feel the smoothness as it brushed against his face. And there were big green wings casting a shadow over him, and despite his fear, Heath couldn't resist his curiosity and fascination, and chanced to look down at the rest of the beast. It was a lot bigger than him, probably a third again his height, at least if it stood upright, and had a long tail snaking off behind it, with a thick spade-like end with horn-like spikes along each edge. Heath realized at this moment he was either dreaming, or this was the most incredible moment of his life. Here he was, pinned down by a dragon, a real-life dragon. The dragon gave a long, low growl, and at this moment it also occurred to him that this might be the last moment of his life. He let fear take precedence over curiosity once more, as he was once again all too aware of those sharp teeth, that spiked tail, the tight grip on his shoulders, all very strong and formidably threatening. And he considered the fact that he was young, tender, and somewhat meaty around the middle. Terror had now fully returned, as Heath felt the true gravity of his situation. "What are you doing here?" it hissed. And it was a hiss, a harsh reptilian hiss, but there were definitely words. But what's more, they were words in English. Although at this point Heath had passed the point where it was possible for him to be any more surprised than he already was, he snapped his gaze back to the creature's eyes, too stunned to speak. "Now," the dragon said, this time less harsh, in a more human voice, seemingly feminine in tone. "What am I going to do with you?" Heath lay there for a moment with his mouth agape, then stammered a little, blurting out, "Don't eat me?" The dragon, who Heath had decided from her voice was most likely a she, looked genuinely shocked. "Eat you? I'm not going to eat you. What made you think I was going to eat you?" You kind of pounced on me," Heath stammered. "And you have sharp teeth, and my arms are starting to go numb from your claws." "Oh, right," she said, loosening her grip a little, and even looking a bit embarrassed. "Sorry." Heath lay there for a moment, awkwardly silent, with her looming over him, similarly mute. He eventually broke the silence. So you're a dragon?" He clearly wasn't going anywhere with her holding him down, so he thought he may as well ask. "You're very observant," the dragon said, a hint of sarcasm in her voice. "Well, I didn't know dragons could talk," Heath continued. "Did someone teach you English?" "Why do you want to know?" she growled. "Curiosity?" he hazarded. The dragon snorted. "Curiosity can be dangerous," she said. "I should know." Heath wondered what she meant by that, but he thought it better not to ask now. He was already trying his luck. Instead, he asked a question of more immediate concern. "So what are you going to do with me then?" he asked shakily. "Well, I can't just let you go. You'll tell people about me," the dragon replied. "No, I won't," he protested, trying to sound convincing. "Who'd believe me anyway?" She considered this for a moment, looking Heath up and down, and simply said, "Perhaps." After a while she added, "Still, I think I'd better take you to my father." At this moment the stress of the situation all became too much, and Heath promptly lost consciousness. "So, that was an old story I posted on DeviantArt sometime around 2010. I think back then I just called it an encounter in the woods or something. There are a few more chapters that I might read again if people enjoy this. If you're still awake and listening to this little outro, then I hope that you have a peaceful night's sleep. And do let me know in the comments if you'd like to hear the rest of this, or as much as I wrote back then. Good night, everyone. Sweet dreams, and I'll be back with some new audio soon. Bye for now.